On a quiet morning in 1948, a man was discovered on Somerton Beach, near Adelaide, Australia. He was dressed impeccably in a brown suit, with polished shoes and a crisp white shirt. It looked as if he had simply sat down for a moment's rest against the seawall. Legs crossed, one arm by his side, the other resting on his chest. As the tide ebbed and flowed, it seemed like just another day. There were no signs of a struggle, no identification, no hint of who he was. This discovery would soon spiral into one of the most baffling mysteries in Australian history, the story of the Somerton Man. Police began their search, checking his pockets. They found only a few mundane items: a used bus ticket, an unlit cigarette, a comb, a half-empty pack of matches, and some chewing gum. There was no wallet, no keys. And curiously, every single label on his clothing had been meticulously cut away. Even his hat, an almost essential accessory for any man in that era, was missing. It was as if this man had deliberately erased himself from existence. The autopsy only deepened the confusion. The man was in his early 40s and in excellent physical condition. His heart and lungs showed signs of sudden failure, but there were no wounds, no bruises. His stomach held traces of his last meal, coffee, and something that looked like poison, yet no known toxin could be identified. It was as though he'd been killed by something science couldn't even detect. The coroner himself called it the most puzzling death I've ever investigated. Weeks turned into a month, and the case took a bizarre twist. A detective, re-examining the man's trousers, found a tiny hidden pocket sewn into the waistband. Inside was a tightly rolled up piece of paper. On it were just two Persian words, Tamám Shud. The phrase means, "It is finished." Investigators traced the words to a book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. But where was the book this scrap of paper had been torn from? Following a public appeal, a local man came forward with an incredible story. He had found a copy of the Rubaiyat tossed into the back seat of his car, which had been parked near Somerton Beach the very night before the body was found. The book was a perfect match. The last page had been torn out, but inside the back cover, faint pencil markings revealed something even more cryptic. 5 lines of seemingly random letters and symbols, and beneath them, a local telephone number. That number led detectives to the home of a young nurse named Jessica Thompson. When police showed her a plaster cast of the dead man's face, she turned pale and nearly fainted, then refused to look at it again. She insisted she didn't know him, but her powerful reaction suggested otherwise. She even pleaded with police to keep her name out of the papers of requests they honored for decades. Investigators scrambled to find a link. Some neighbors recalled a mysterious man visiting Jessica's home months earlier. Others claimed she once owned a copy of the Rubaiyat, the same rare edition as the one found in the car. But she denied everything. Soon after, she withdrew from public view entirely, taking her secrets with her. The man's fingerprints were sent across Australia and even to Scotland Yard in London. There were no matches. His dental records didn't correspond to anyone in the country. Even his shoes were strangely pristine, showing no signs of having walked on sand. It was as if the Somerton Man had simply materialized out of thin air. With no leads left, authorities buried him under a simple headstone that read, "Here lies the unknown man found at Somerton Beach." For years, flowers would mysteriously appear at his grave, but no one ever saw who left them. As the years passed, theories flourished. Was he a jilted lover who took his own life after being rejected by Jessica Thompson? Or was he a spy? This was the dawn of the Cold War, and Australia was a hive of intelligence activity. British and American operatives used nearby bases to monitor Soviet communications. A man with no identity, carrying a coded message, found dead under mysterious circumstances, it all fit the profile of espionage. Reporters speculated that the code in the Rubaiyat was a cipher, and Tamám Shud was a final signal that his mission was over. But despite the best efforts of cryptographers and naval intelligence, the code has never been broken. In the 1970s, new research brought the focus back to Jessica's family. Her son Robin was found to share several rare genetic traits with the Somerton Man, including the same distinctive wedge-shaped ears and missing lateral incisors. The resemblance was uncanny. Some began to believe that Robin was the Somerton Man's son. If true, it would mean the unknown man wasn't just a stranger to Jessica, but someone she had once loved. The story faded from the headlines but never truly disappeared. For decades, the case files sat locked away in police archives. But investigators never gave up hope. The man's body had been preserved in a sealed coffin, waiting for a day when science could finally give him back his name. That day arrived in 2021. Using advanced DNA analysis and genealogical mapping, researchers extracted genetic material from a few strands of hair found trapped in the original plaster cast. They painstakingly traced his ancestry through public databases, eventually landing on a name: Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne. Webb had vanished from public records in 1947, a year before his body was found on the beach. He was 43, known to be intelligent and introverted, with a background in chemistry, a skill set that might explain the suspected untraceable poison. The identification was a monumental breakthrough, but it didn't solve the heart of the mystery. Why was Carl Webb in Adelaide? Why did he go to such extreme lengths to erase his identity? And what was his true connection to Jessica Thompson? Some believe he traveled to find her after a failed relationship, carrying the Rubaiyat as a final. Poetic goodbye, Tamám Shud. It is finished. Others think he was fleeing something far more sinister, perhaps a secret experiment, a double life, or a past he couldn't escape. To this day, some researchers remain skeptical of the DNA conclusion, arguing that a name doesn't explain the purpose. The code remains undeciphered, the relationship with Jessica unproven, and the true motive for his death is still missing. Today, the Somerton Man's grave continues to draw visitors from all over the world. Even with a name, the questions far outweigh the answers. The mystery is no longer about who he was, but why his story still captivates us more than 70 years later. Perhaps it's because Carl Webb represents something deeply human: the fear of being forgotten, the search for identity, and the idea that even an ordinary person can leave behind an extraordinary enigma. Somewhere beneath the sands of that Australian beach, caught between science and secrecy, the truth is still waiting to be uncovered. Maybe, just like that tiny note in his pocket, the message is already there. We just haven't learned how to read it yet. If you enjoy exploring stories like this, remember to like, subscribe, and stay curious. Another mystery unravels soon on NovusThread.